On the broadcast tonight from Cairo, Egypt remains on the brink. Day 7 of these demonstrations, gearing up for a massive march tomorrow. Chaos at the airport as thousands of people, a lot of them Americans, scramble to get out. And we'll have the latest from top U.S. officials and the people on the ground here in Egypt. Nightly news from Cairo begins now.
Rage and revolution, the Middle East in crisis. This is a special edition of NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams, reporting from Cairo.
And good evening tonight from Cairo in Egypt, where we found a safe spot to do our broadcast tonight and cobbled together a few ways to get the pictures and sound on the air, though it may be something less than our usual broadcast quality. It's such an important story, entering day 7 of what may turn out to be a genuine top-to-bottom sea change, people's revolution, and in the process may rewrite the contemporary history of this region. Each day we say it, but it's true. This enters a new stage again tomorrow, and that's because of the promised size of what they're calling the million-person march in Cairo. We've seen so many television pictures of the main public square there, never quite empty as people flaunt the curfew. A lot of that is going on in the highly populated areas. People are more respectful of the curfew, staying off the roads as you get to the outskirts of town. And then there's the exodus out of here. Thousands of people hoping to hop on commercial, scheduled, or special charter flights. Oil companies getting their employees out, various countries, and that includes, of course, hundreds of Americans at the airport trying to get out. We have all of it covered. We have the entire region covered. Our entire team is here with us. That includes Richard Engel, who for days has been down in the thick of it in central Cairo. He starts off our coverage tonight. Richard, good evening.
Good evening, Brian. Egyptians are bracing for what happens in this country when the sun comes up. The protesters are expected to gather here in Cairo's main square and then march on the presidential palace. Egypt is heading for its biggest showdown yet. Tens of thousands flooded into Tahrir Square today, but this was just a prologue. Organizers are calling for 1 million people to go to the square tomorrow to demand that President Hosni Mubarak step down. This morning in Cairo, the army was making preparations. Reinforcements were called in to seal off downtown, check ID cards, and prevent journalists from taking pictures. Some soldiers fired warning shots in the air, but demonstrators kept streaming into Tahrir, which in Arabic means liberation.
Even if the army will kill us, we are not afraid.
Protesters are now gathering here from provinces across Egypt. This is becoming the first truly nationwide demonstration. The police also returned to the streets today, but stayed away from the demonstrators. They don't want to repeat what happened last Friday. Clashes with demonstrators amid clouds of tear gas and, as seen in this new footage from Al Jazeera, running over demonstrators. Today, some Egyptians jeered and baited policemen, accusing them of supporting a corrupt regime. President Mubarak still seems to be looking for a compromise by reshuffling his government. Mubarak's new vice president went on television to say he wants a dialogue with the opposition. But it may be too late.
And that's the end. That's the end of Mubarak era.
The protesters are no longer just young people fed up with Mubarak. The Muslim Brotherhood, a banned Islamic group here, is now taking a prominent role. One of its leaders was a main speaker in Tahrir today. The Muslim Brotherhood denounces terrorism, but supports Islamic law, is anti-Israel, and opposes U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East. Tonight, I visited the Muslim Brotherhood's main office to interview one of the group's most senior leaders, Issam al-Aryan. He just escaped from prison this weekend.
The majority of Egyptians are Muslims, respecting Islam, and the minority has its rights preserved even by Islam. They are citizens. We are calling for a civil state, democratic state, which respect religion, respect all religions, and give all the citizens equal rights and duties.
Al-Arian lost his voice because he went from his jail cell straight to cheering in Tahrir. He says the Brotherhood can work with the United States and compromise, but offered no specifics.
If the Egyptian government falls, isn't the Muslim Brotherhood just going to take over, and isn't that bad for stability in the Middle East?
Those are hypocritical about democracy. If they respect democratic principles, they must respect the choice of the people.
The instability in Egypt is terrifying foreign residents. In her apartment, Debbie Alcala from Phoenix was packing up today. She's lived in Egypt for years, but decided to go after she spoke to her son.
It's not the way I thought I would leave, but I hope I'll be back. I have a business here.
So far, the protests have not been anti-American, Brian, and in Tahrir Square now you'll find young and old, religious and secular Egyptians, but mostly people working class who are just tired of 30 years of Mubarak's rule. Brian?
Richard Engel in the middle of it all again today, and where tomorrow again a new stage begins. Richard, thanks. And we can't understate the effort to get out of here. Think of it, all these people from so many nations, people living here, tourists, academics, folks working for oil companies. We've all come in through the central airport where they're trying to leave from. Lester Holt here with us as part of our team came in through the same place. You saw it with your own eyes today.
I think you would agree it was like swimming upstream coming into this country. Brian, anyone who has been to Egypt knows what a remarkable, wonderful place it is in good times. So many of the Americans fleeing tonight are doing so with heavy hearts, but frankly, they are fearful for their safety. With chaos spreading through the streets of Cairo, hundreds of American tourists and diplomats are getting out, and a mad dash to the airport became more of a crawl. Many commercial planes sat idle on the tarmac waiting for clearance to leave. Among those who made it to the airport, Debbie Alcala, the American woman Richard Engel spoke to in town.
I am sad to be leaving. I wasn't planning to leave, so, you know, when I decided to go, I decided to go.
Steve and Roxanne Peterson of Coal Valley, Illinois, on vacation in Cairo, are now eager to get back home.
I am so relieved. I feel that it is definitely getting more tense.
Just getting to the airport was an ordeal that took hours, and travelers had to endure long lines once they got there. In all, 2,400 Americans have told the U.S. Embassy here they want to leave Egypt. The State Department provided 9 charter planes to get about 1,200 of them out today, flying them to Greece, Cyprus, and Turkey. Among the first to arrive in Cyprus, American diplomat Tom Sanchez.
A couple of our colleagues there, from their hotel, they could smell the tear gas and had to close their windows.
Many more made it to Athens. Ryan and Joanna Wyatt Miller are headed home to San Francisco.
They had put a boulder through the bottom of the hotel, broken in, loitered the entire mall next door, and then burned it to the ground, which was attached to our hotel.
Americans on a nerve-wracking journey of a lifetime, feeling much safer tonight, but still a long way from home. Once those evacuees make it to Cyprus or those European destinations, they then have to find their own flights back to the States. And Brian, they will have to pay the government the fair market value of those charter flights getting out of here.
I walked into the airport tonight, ran into the family from Illinois. They tell me, oh, we just talked to Lester Holt. So they're still waiting to get out to Cyprus tonight. But that's the scene at this airport. Lester, thank you for that aspect of this story. This crisis, of course, being watched in world capitals and by world leaders very, very closely, puts a lot of nations in a dicey situation. Our chief foreign affairs correspondent, Andrea Mitchell, watching that where the U.S. is concerned all day in D.C. Andrea is in our Washington newsroom tonight. Andrea, good evening.
Good evening, Brian. The Obama administration is toughening its message to President Mubarak. But this is an awkward diplomatic straddle, trying to support the protesters without undermining other Arab leaders, fearful that they could be next. As the protests grow, so does the White House pressure on Mubarak. Without calling for Egypt's leader to step down, the message is clear.
I do believe orderly transition means change. And what we've advocated from the very beginning is that the way Egypt looks and operates must change.
The U.S. wants Mubarak to negotiate with opposition groups, cancel a 1981 law outlawing political organizations, guarantee that presidential elections are free and fair, and free political prisoners, a message the president delivered to Mubarak himself and is now being reinforced by a veteran retired diplomat, former ambassador to Egypt Frank Wisner.
We have asked him to add his perspective to our analysis on current developments. He has traveled to Cairo, is on the ground now.
It is a delicate dance. At a White House meeting today, one official is quoted as saying, "We can't be seen as telling a leader to go."
On the one hand, they don't want to tell President Mubarak outright, "We want you to get out." But they have been telling him that he should introduce reforms and changes, which I think that if he were to introduce them, that would be tantamount to him putting the noose around his neck.
The administration has been trying to catch up as events move at a dizzying pace.
But I think they understand very well that they've got to get on the side of history here. And I think you'll see that unfold in the next few days.
Senior officials hope that sending a highly respected retired veteran diplomat to Cairo will reinforce the message that Mubarak needs to do a lot more. They are avoiding saying publicly that Mubarak's regime cannot survive. Brian?
They're under a lot of pressure from the demonstrators here. Andrea Mitchell in Washington, thanks. Now let's come back to this region. To Tel Aviv we go next. A lot of people watching Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for what he does and what he says on this topic. Our own Michelle Kaczynski among them. She's in Tel Aviv tonight. Michelle, good evening.
Good evening, Brian. Israel is focused on its one key ally in its region. Will it turn more friend or foe? That is an uneasy feeling after more than 30 years of an at least cool peace. And tonight the Prime Minister is voicing the concerns of so many that Egypt could become another Iran.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu finally broke an official, uncharacteristic silence here on the rage next door.
What could happen, and it's happened already in Iran, is Islamic extremism, which surely represses human rights, tramples them to dust, and are a danger to peace, stability, and all civilized people.
The worry at the top are things moving too quickly in Egypt to stabilize. The press here has even reported that Israel wants the West to tone down criticism of Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak, or public predictions he'll be gone, and that the government and military are now hurriedly strategizing for Israel's future in its neighborhood full of high fences. For Kinneret Eisenberg and her friends who work in tourism, worries about the economic fallout of long stable Egypt suddenly shifting are stronger for now than fears over security.
I know that we have a strong army and we have someone to take care of us, and it's been always like this, so when it comes to that, I feel safe.
And there are questions within Israel. Why didn't military intelligence see this coming? And why has this nation focused on the actions and treaties of Arab governments without taking more into account the sentiment of citizens? Brian?
Michelle Kaczynski in Tel Aviv. Michelle, thanks. It's been said that what is happening here in Egypt started with the uprising in Tunisia. People have used phrases like prairie fire to guess about how it might spread. Tunisia was a modern-day first in the Arab world, but it may not be the last, as our own veteran Middle Eastern correspondent Martin Fletcher reports for us tonight.
Their slogan, today Egypt, tomorrow Yemen. Yemen's president has been in power 32 years, even longer than Egypt's Mubarak. Will a full-scale revolt erupt here too? Many countries share Egypt's problems. Young populations, poverty, unemployment, suppression of human rights. To Egypt's west, look at Algeria. Worried about rising Islamic power, the government introduced a state of emergency 19 years ago. The call is for freedom. So, following the revolts in Tunisia and Egypt, are other regimes in real danger?
The conditions that hold in Egypt that cause this to come about do exist widely across the region, and that's a big concern.
Jordan. First they called for food, now for government change. Jordan's Muslim Brotherhood warned unrest will spread and topple governments close to the United States. Libya, sandwiched between Tunisia and Egypt. Colonel Gaddafi has ruled unopposed for more than 40 years. But could his time be up? He's cut taxes for food and basic products to head off trouble. But is that just a Band-Aid?
Well, for some of these rulers, I think that they're certainly scrambling now to try to placate the people. For some of them, it may be too little too late.
More troubling questions. Will Islamic fundamentalists, well organized almost everywhere, fill the power vacuum? And is that good or bad? Who knows? Certainly experts are calling this the end of an era. It could lead to necessary policy changes and a drop in tension. Or it could usher in spreading revolutions. It's a nervous time in the Middle East. Martin Fletcher, NBC News, New York.
And we continue our coverage from our team on the ground here in Cairo. After a break, what city life is like these days in this city upside down.
Politics matters. Do you see a third party becoming viable in the United States? We're living through a time when politics is fascinating and the divisions are real.
Any withdrawal will be conditions-based. Is that not enough to satisfy you?
I am going to ask the tough questions. If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
Back here in Egypt tonight, a nation of 80 million, picture combining populations of California, Texas, and New York. Cairo, a city of 18 million, sprawling, teeming, but these days, for the people who lived here, it's upside down. CNBC's Aaron Burnett, part of our team here, spent the day out among them.
Brian, tonight we're all standing in a city where the law is on hold, and literally it's every person for himself.
We saw it firsthand last night, driving in from the airport. As lawlessness spreads, people are protecting their own neighborhoods by any means necessary. Young men armed with bats and axes stopped cars, looking for looters. Egypt is better than this, one of them told us. In the outdoor market today, the effects of the chaos are hitting home. Food supplies are dwindling. People waited more than 5 hours for bread. In Cairo grocery stores, panic buying has begun. Far cry from the markets fully stocked just a few months ago. Before the crisis, experts say unemployment was 20%. It's almost certainly worse now.
I'm standing in the middle of Cairo's biggest square. It's peaceful here, and right now it's prayer time. But it's full. Nobody's been going to work for days. How long can this situation go on?
Mohammed Rashid's barbershop now stands empty.
This is a small problem, but you know, everything is stopped here in Egypt. You see? Everything is stopped.
Everything is stopped.
Yeah, the bank, no working.
Storefronts are padlocked, gas stations closed, bank machines down. This man says, I want to go shopping, but the ATMs don't have any cash in them. But amidst unrest and uncertainty, men gathered to fly kites on the banks of the Nile today, singing traditional Egyptian songs of hope for the future of a nation in crisis.
That peaceful image was echoed from shopkeepers and even the most frightening vigilantes that we met. They don't want to use force, and that's part of the reason that all eyes will be on that huge protest here in central Cairo tomorrow. And Brian, we wanted to follow up on a story we brought you last night on looting at Egypt's National Museum. Looters had broken in and tried to steal some of the national treasures. NBC News went to the museum today. We took the pictures that you're looking at right now as guards were cleaning up. And Brian, we can tell you that at least right now, the treasures are safe. Back to you.
Aaron Burnett, not far from our location in Cairo here tonight. Aaron, thanks. We'll take another break. When we continue, some of the day's other news included some big weather on your way, no matter where you live in the U.S.